been all over the place. I said, I'm telling you, everybody's been trying to get a hold of you. And the next thing you're in Detroit, you're in Lansing, you're there, you're here, you're everywhere. Tell the members what you've been doing.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. If members read the paper last month, you can't see the detail here, but you can see the list of meetings. I promised people when I ran this time that I would reinstate the meetings that were eliminated, and I would go out and about both in the service area and outside the service area and meet with members. One of the things that people know, probably the thing members appreciate the most is when we're meeting with them. And so I've been doing that. I'm halfway through the list. We still have the rest of the list to go. But this month I am out meeting with members almost every single day this entire month. And then after I do that initially, I'll go back through and identify what regular meetings I'll continue to have. And it's likely to be quite a schedule. So we've been all over the state. Last week I was in Marquette Thursday, and then I was in Sheboygan on Friday, then drove to Detroit and had 2 meetings in Detroit with tribal members, and then I was in Okemos for the Lansing area, and then Grand Rapids, and then back home. And the good news is that we've had probably 50, 60 people at every meeting, and so that's a pretty good sized meeting compared to what we have had in the past. So we're going to keep doing that.
Good. Did they have a lot of questions
for
you? And what were their questions?
Well, some of the questions I think that they're going to ask are some similar ones to the ones that we asked on the Sioux Tribe Guide. What are the questions you want to hear about? Some of them were some of the same questions. They want to know about the budget. They want to know about the authority of the chair. They want to know about the new constitution. Specifically, they were very interested to know what they can do to help move this process along. There are some rumors out there that they have questions about that they wanted answers to, and some of them I have answers and some of them I don't have answers. Okay. So I'm hoping that we can get to some of those during the question period.
Okay.
But I think the most important thing is that they're supportive of moving forward in a positive direction. They're really grateful. I was really moved at these meetings. In fact, I want to share, before we get going, I want to share at the Sheboygan meeting, an elder approached me, and he's what I would put in the classification of the working poor. He's retired, but between him and his wife, they are just below the eligibility criteria for our durable medical program. And so then they don't get their glasses or their dentures covered. And so he was very, he expressed the need there, and it was heart-wrenching to me because, they don't have a big income. But anyway, even through that, and I told him I'd try to figure out a way to help him, but through that he also gave me this gift. And it's beautiful, and you can see that it's got an Indian head, and it's a feather, and then when you open it, it's a knife. Okay, so Indians like their knives. Mm-hmm. And in it, it's inscribed, and it says, Aaron, great leader, and it said Lower Peninsula Chippewa Tribe.
Wow. Who was that represented?
The individual's first name is Jerry.
Jerry? And
so he gave this to me, I think, to remind me of my responsibility for the members that live outside the service area. And I'm committed to that. I talked to, in the new Constitution, it has a provision for that, and I talked to members about the importance of not forgetting the people outside who are our brothers and sisters, uncles, aunts. In fact, my uncle, my mother's brother, lives in New Buffalo, Michigan. If you look at the map of Michigan, he lives way down here. He's a full-blooded Indian, born on Sugar Island, spoke the first 9 years of his life speaking Ojibwe. To me, he's no less a member just because he lives outside the service area. And so the one thing that I'm hoping to be able to do is to convince the members up home that this is not a threat. When we look at representation for members outside, it's not a threat to anything we have back home. And if we extend ourselves and we care about all of our members, then we won't see it as a threat. So we can't forget that everybody that is outside of the service area are our brothers and sisters, uncles, aunts, cousins, and we have a responsibility to them to reach out to them. So.
Well, that was really nice.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful.
I wanted to ask you. There's a lot. First of all, Lansing. Did you meet with the mayor down there? Anything on the new casino or anything like that?
Yes. Actually, we had a meeting with one of the developers on acquiring an adjacent parcel of land for parking. And so I can't get into details about that because we're negotiating, but things are looking pretty good. And then I met with the mayor over dinner, and I'm a vegan, so he took me to a restaurant that he knew of that serves vegan food. And it was nice, and it was actually they only serve vegan food, so it was like probably the nicest place you can go if you're vegan. And then afterwards we sat and visited at another location, and it was really a nice setting. And Burge Monero is a friend of mine, and I know the whole comment that he made during earlier this year. Some people didn't like it, but he's always been a friend of mine, and I think he's got the interest of his city at heart. But he also is, I think, genuinely interested to see how what they can do and we can do mutually beneficial. So
good. So it was a good. It was
a very good
meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Now, all your travels that you've been doing here, meeting with the people and letting them voice their concerns. We had some sort of really, the members were calling me, and it's been on the SDG about the board of directors taking trips that we don't feel the need for those trips right now at this time. Because there's people at work, you're trying to get the budget balanced, and you were trying to do this and that. And they wondered if you knew anything about these trips, and if you let them go on these trips. These are questions that they're asking, so I'm asking you, did you know anything about these trips that they've been taking?
Well, let me start out by saying there is legitimate and valuable travel for the board and for the chair. And I would include in that category traveling to Washington, D.C. to do government relations with members of Congress, the senators.
That's understandable, but Vegas?
Well, I'll get to the Vegas. So there is legitimate travel for that, to represent our tribe in areas where that's specifically what's being done. There's routine travel throughout Michigan. Like example, I'm going all over the place meeting with members. I believe that's legitimate because I'm meeting with members.
Correct.
The trip that's in question was not something that I approved. On the Sioux Tribe Guide, there was a assertion that there are 4 people that were going to go up to Las Vegas. They were going for some economic development training. And my opinion is that I don't go to those kind of conferences because I believe that I have the talent and ability to figure that stuff out myself. If there are trainings on particular areas that's something I don't know about, I can get reading material, I can subscribe to information. I generally don't go on trips like that because I'm confident in my abilities. I don't need this additional training. And so this was an economic development training that that was happening in Las Vegas. Now, one of the concerns that people should have is, and that they need to know, is that I don't approve these. These don't come to me for approval.
Who does?
The board has a general budget, and
can you tell me how much is in that budget?
Oh, I didn't bring that with me. It covers the board salaries, it covers local travel, it covers some travel, but the trips that we're talking about for Vegas, they're not budgeted. They're not specifically budgeted. There's a general budget for the board for travel and training, but these trips were not specifically budgeted. And so these items were not brought to the board together collectively. So the boards never sat collectively and discussed whether or not there was a value to go on these trips. And I was never consulted on whether or not these are valuable. The better way to do this would be for us to identify an amount for each board for travel and training that would benefit their jobs. That's number one. Number two, when we go on these trips, we should be required to bring back and do a PowerPoint presentation on the value of why that was important. And then third, whenever we do these travels, we should require that we should have a discussion about whether or not this type of training has utility and value back for the tribe. And if it doesn't, we don't do it. And so those kind of travel requests should come to the entire board in a public session so members can see what types of trips that were going on. And I want to make sure people understand that there's a type of travel that Kathy Abramson does as the chair of the National Indian Health Board that I don't fit into this category because, number one, they pay for it. We don't. The tribe doesn't pay for it. And she's the chair of that board, so she represents our tribe and other tribes at those meetings, and so I don't put that into the same category. You know, a big question members have is whether or not this travel is necessary. And I think if it is necessary, we should be willing to have that discussion in a public session and then have the board vote on whether or not to send people to particular trainings.
Okay, I'm going to ask you point blank here. Okay, I'm going to be the devil's advocate right now. You, Aaron, was this trip necessary for 4 people to go?
I don't think so. I mean, I'll be upfront and honest, and when I became chair, the way that I manage my budget. I'm a very conservative person when it comes to the budget. You know, I take seriously my job. When the board appropriates the money, it's my job to balance the budget. And so when I came back in office, I asked some questions because I heard about some of these trips that board members were going on.
And so you knew nothing about them, right?
On this one, I didn't know anything. And so when I heard that there was some other travel that was coming about, I asked for the information. I asked during our monthly financial reviews. And I was told by the staff that they couldn't provide that information to me.
The chairman?
Yeah, and I was like, what do you mean? And
who told you that?
The budget staff told me that it was clarified to them that, stipulated to them that they couldn't share board travel or any information regarding board members with other board members or with the chair. Right? The only way that I know to manage the budget is to be able to ask questions and to, you know, fly spec and figure out what's been spent. And so, you know, if I'm asking questions about where the money's been spent, to me it's not good enough to answer that we can't give you that information. Now, I don't believe staff was being difficult because the staff have expressed that they were told that if they share that information they can be fired. And I was like, well, wait a minute, where's that coming from? And what it was explained to me by the board secretary, Joanne Carr, is that a resolution that was passed in 2006, which is privacy of board members' phone and computer records, that resolution somehow restricted the ability to look at board travel. And my opinion is that's absolutely nonsense, because first of all, I was here in 2006. What I recall the board voting on was limiting access to cell phones and emails. And the reason this was put in place, put in place as a response to me, because during the litigation for the 7+1 case, this money that was stolen and paid out by the former chairperson, I was trying to determine how that whole thing happened. And so we looked at all the emails and cell records of the defendants so that we could piece together the conspiracy on how they did it. And we were able to do that. We were able to make a good case. The other thing is when the former chairperson fired a person from Greektown and didn't have the authority and then paid that person out a $250,000 settlement, also happened at the Greektown level. The Greektown Management Board suspended him, and then we evaluated his performance, and then we terminated his employment. And so then he filed a lawsuit for $3.5 million. And I suspected that somehow he was finding out information from closed proprietary meetings. And so I checked cell records of members of the board, because the only way that he could be finding out this information is if members of the board were contacting him and supplying him information. And so I checked the cell records, and sure enough, there was a couple board members that were calling Bernard or calling a in-between, and I think supplying him information that potentially would have weakened our litigation. It weakened us because he was suing us. And so it seemed like he knew every step of the way, he knew what was happening behind closed doors. So I checked the cell records, and sure enough, I can verify that members of our board were contacting him and
do you want to mention who it was?
I don't. In the interest of moving forward, I don't want to do that. I have shared it with the board of directors, and it's up to them to do something about it. It's not criminal that I can see, and so in the interest of moving forward.
But it might have saved us $3.5 million too, right?
Well, in the end, when we filed for bankruptcy, that liability on his contract was erased. But it doesn't address the issue of the conflict of interest of a member of our board to act in a way that serves to undermine our tribe and weaken us. And so anyway, I think my looking at their emails and their cell records were done in the interest of the tribe. Now,
Correct, and it's tribe's property.
Right.
It's not their own personal stuff, it was the tribe's property.
That's correct. So, now, some disagree with that. And so this resolution was passed that prohibited me from that point forward from looking at that information. And it also put a consequence on the staff that if they assisted me in trying to get to that information, they could be fired. No, they would be fired. And so the staff are fearful now because they think that if they supply certain information to me, they're going to be fired. Now, after I left office, the board secretary, the secretary to the board, Joanne Carr, interpreted that this resolution also covers board travel. And I find that to be, and it doesn't. No, it says specifically, it says it covers phone, computer, email, or other electronic records. And so what they're interpreting is, what Joanne is interpreting is that also covers board travel, because once a request for travel is made, it goes into our accounting system, and then therefore it's electronic. Now I think that's a huge stretch. I don't think there's any real justification for that. So here's the problem. Right now, we could have board members, individual board members, that are doing all kinds of personal travel. And we don't have any way of checking that, because under the interpretation, I can't even get to the information. I can't get it through accounting. I can't
you're
get
the chairman.
It's ridiculous.
We depend on you for the word that comes out.
Right. We can't, even the board members collectively, because the board members said this is nonsense. Who gave that interpretation? And so I don't know if that was a common interpretation for the 4 years that I was gone, but the problem is that I have no way of checking to see if board members are making personal travel under the disguise that it's travel or training or whatever. I don't know if people are going to Hawaii or to, I don't know, to Australia for personal
All right, let
trips.
me ask you this then. Who's making these decisions?
I would say that they are being made by the board members themselves.
So they're just taking